Right, so this video is going to be a bit of a demonstration for you on the Overdrive and Distortion pedals that I have in my collection. Some of them are actually quite common, so I don't have anything particularly valuable, rare, or hard to find. So a lot of the stuff I've got on my homemade crappy pedal board I picked up from eBay, so nothing eBay or Gumtree or Craigslist or whatever you want to call it. So nothing too spectacular, and I'd say probably nothing over sort of the 150 Aussie dollar mark, around $200 US or something like that. So it does take a little bit of experimentation, a little bit of trial and error. There are different configurations. So I have on my pedal board here, starting from the right-hand side, the yellow pedal there on the far right, that's actually a Boss Super Overdrive. The model number is SD1. And then out of that SD1, I have it going into another Boss pedal. This one's a classic, but you may not recognize it in its black casing. It's actually usually orange. It's the very famous Boss DS1 pedal. So very common. I believe Kurt Cobain used one. I think John Frusciante from the Red Hot Chili Peppers has been known to use one. They're not uncommon, but I would say that they are often abused. So what I mean by that is people don't always have best settings on a DS1 pedal. They tend to crank that distortion up, and once that distortion gets past a certain level, the sound of it sort of drops off a little bit. It starts to sound a little bit fizzy or zizzy or whatever you want to, whatever word you want to use to describe it. Coming out of the DS1, I'm then going into a MXR Super Badass Distortion or Badass Distortion. So that's a much more heavy sort of sounding pedal, much more, lot more gain in that pedal. Very big tendency to scoop the middles out and go for that Metallica sound. Going out of the Super Badass Distortion, I'm going into a Ibanez Tube Screamer. That's a very famous pedal. That one's the TS9. Plenty of them available out there. They're so easy to find, and even so easy to go and buy. They're quite cheap. One of the oldest sort of overdrive pedals getting around, I guess. Tried and true. Then coming out of that, I am going into a full tone OCD pedal. Now, the actual version of that one, I'm going to have to go and check. I don't actually know the version of that pedal, to be honest with you. It's one of the later ones, one of the later revisions. Like I said, nothing super rare or super valuable or anything like that. Pretty easy to pick up out there on the second-hand market, if people are willing to part with them, I guess. Coming out of the OCD, I'm going into a bit of a different pedal there. It's the very famous pedal called a clon. Okay, so the original clones are super, super duper expensive and nothing I can afford. But what there are on the market are a lot of clones. Okay, so you can find a clone of a clone. There are lots of clones out there. So that's actually what I have right at the very end of the chain. So the amp I'm using is a very common, cheap Chinese amp called a Marshall DSL 40C. Again, picked up off Gumtree or something like that, quite cheap. So they're actually fairly common and they're fairly cheap. And I just want to sort of use everyday equipment to sort of give a bit of a demonstration on what can be achieved. So I'm plugged into that Marshall amp. This is my bass sound. I say bass sound, that's the sound just coming from the amp with no pedals engaged at all. So I'd say it's a fairly clean-ish sound with a little bit of maybe a tiny little bit of breakup. So the gain set quite low and the volume higher than the gain, obviously. But the thing about the gain on the amp, once you start ramping up the gain on the amp, it changes everything. So the whole recipe, I guess you'd call it, how you set your pedals can completely change. So I'm going to start doing a little bit of experimenting. I'm going to show you. So in terms of what microphones I'm actually using a tried and true Shure SM57, which is off axis on the speaker cone. And I have a condenser mic, a valve condenser mic called a Rode K2, Australian mic. Just about probably, I don't know, half a metre back from the actual speaker. So I'll bring in a video of that, shot of that so you can see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start playing around a little bit. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to go and engage the Super Overdrive pedal. Okay, so with that pedal, I'm just going to see if I can get the camera a bit closer so you can see the settings. So this is the Super Overdrive pedal. So I've got the level set at about 12 o'clock. I have the drive very, very low on this. I'd call that 9 o'clock. And I have the tone control. Where do I have that? Hard to see. I have the tone control at about 11 o'clock. So it's giving me a sort of a dirty, I call that a bit of a rock sound. Probably more of a rock, straight up rock sound. If I roll off my volume there, I'll sort of... So nothing too over the top at this stage. What I'm going to do is actually go kick on one of the other pedals. So what I'm going to do is actually click on the last pedal in the chain, which is the clone. I just want to show you what I use that pedal for. So I'm just going to go and zoom in on that one. So on the clone there that you can see, I've got the volume of that one probably at around 9 o'clock. I know it's a little bit hard to see there. It's sort of lights are playing around with my camera. I've got the gain sort of very low. I would say around probably not even the 9 o'clock. And I've got the tone probably about 12 o'clock. Let me just double check that. So gain's at about 11 o'clock. So there's not a great deal of gain in this pedal, but what I'm essentially using it for is just a little bit of a boost at the end and a little bit of a kind of filter sound. Now I'll show you what I mean by that. So this is the sound. I'm going to click it on and off and show you the difference. With it on. This is the clon by itself. Super overdrive on. So I wouldn't call that anything really special in terms of a sound. So this is just sort of like the bass point of it. So I've got this clon sort of boosting it at the end. I call it a filtering pedal. It sort of filters the sound a little bit. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to pop one of these distortion pedals on. I'm going to actually put the OCD pedal on because that's the one that's in the camera right now. And I'm going to actually just give you a demo of what that sounds like. Drive and volume at about 11 o'clock, tone right in the middle. So things start to get a bit saucy now, okay? So much more distorted, really quite aggressive, I guess. So now we're starting to get into the more chunk sort of stuff. So grungier sort of. More of a grungy sort of sound, I'd say. Now, I'm going to turn the super overdrive off just to show you something. So what you get with the super overdrive off, more of a sort of, it's not as full on with the distortion. It's sort of like a bit of a more grungy rock sound. But the beauty of the overdrive pedal is when you want to start getting into some riffing, you can sort of kick that pedal on and just get a little bit of more extra drive. So the overdrive, super overdrive on, get a little bit of extra front end push, which sort of gives it a bit more of a riffy sort of quality where you can really hear those riffs sort of. So you can hear them there. I'll kick that pedal on. Super overdrive's on. So we're sort of like, I don't know what sort of area that would be. It's sort of like getting into hard rock. Sort of like Foo Fighters or something like that. The thing with when you're doing this sort of stuff as well is you don't want to go too hard with the distortion, especially in a recording situation, because you will lose a bit of clarity in the mix. Like this is different hearing it like this because we're not hearing it with drums and bass and stuff like that. So I'm gonna dial up a more distorted pedal. I'm gonna dial up the Boss DS1. Okay. Get ready. So that last pedal was a OCD pedal. It's sort of more of a, I don't know if it's more of an overdrive pedal than a distortion pedal, but this is definitely a distortion pedal. So this is adding that zizziness or real fuzz to the sound. So here we go. Now we're sort of like, we're definitely in the grunge realm now. So we're talking like 90s. So way more distorted. We're getting a bit of chunk as well. Okay, so if I would go, I'm going to go turn off some of the other ones so you can just hear what that distortion pedal sounds like. So there's super overdrive off, and there's the clon. The clon's off. See how different that is? If I'd shown you that sound, you would have gone, oh, we'll never buy a DS1. Probably not too bad there. Just put the Super Overdrive on. We'll have a listen to that. Okay, so this is Super Overdrive and Boss DS1. Two very cheap, easily available pedals. So a little bit overly distorted for me. A little bit over distorted. Listen what happens when I put this clon back on. Cleans it up. It's sort of still distorted. Still distorted, but it's got that, it's just filtered out. Like all that zizziness is gone. So much more clarity. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to switch over to this super badass. So I'm going to leave the SD1 on, and I'm going to leave the clon on. We're going to turn the distortion off and pop this MXR pedal on. Whoa, Nelly. Whoa there. This one's got a lot more going on. It's got a bass, mid and treble, which are the three controls at the bottom. That's like much more EQ option than any of the other pedals. Then we've got like an output and a distortion. So I've got the output actually quite low. I've got distortion probably a little bit higher than I have on some of the other pedals. For this pedal though, this pedal's actually got quite a bit of distortion. So having the setting at say 11 o'clock is a lot more than having this other Boss distortion pedal at say 12 o'clock. But this is the sort of... Now we're sort of getting into this sort of territory. Turn the SD1 off. It's still got a distorted sound. Like I said before, the SD1 can be used to sort of give yourself a little bit of that extra gain. So it's not that distorted. It is distorted. What am I talking about? It's not overly distorted. So you're listening to that sort of like... So I'm adding little bits of distortion into the front of each pedal to get a different sound at the end. Here's with it back on. So you sort of see where we're going here. We're just dirtying up the front as we go into another pedal, just adding a little bit of tonal character, and then I'm using this clone pedal as a sort of filter on the back end of the signal chain there. So I just want to start fiddling around with this tube screamer a bit. Now the tube screamer has a fairly limited band of sound that it lets through. You'll really hear a change in the sound when this thing comes on. So I'm just going to go over, I think, what did I say? I've got them both set at, looks like output and distortion set at 12 o'clock. I'm just going to go pop that on and just have a bit of a listen here. Turn the SD1 off. I find this tube screamer is better if you're sort of playing more like lead sort of riffs. It'll sort of help you to cut through when you're sort of doing these octaves, things like that. You can sort of hear it really squaring off that sound wave and stuff. I'll turn it on and off. So that's off. And that's on. If I sort of turn the drive down of that pedal a bit. still hear it squaring off the sound, squaring off the sound waves. So probably I might try using a different pedal. I might try the DS1 with this tube screamer. I'll just put the super overdrive on. Getting pretty raucous and out of control there, like sort of on the edge of chaos. Kind of like it. Yeah, so let's try the tube screamer into the OCD, because the tube screamer is going into the OCD. So we're going to go overdrive SD1 into another overdrive into the tube screamer into the OCD. Here we go, fingers crossed. I should also mention that I always have the clon on. Okay. We've got these three bad boys in action right now. All right. So SD1, tube screamer, OCD, clon. Here we go. I don't even know what this is going to sound like. So it's sort of like a bit more metal, I guess. There I put another distortion on. Let's put the DS1 on. So then we've got SD1, DS1, tube screamer, OCD, clon. So we're running, that would be a, what's that, 5 pedal combination of overdrive and distortion. Here we go. Should mention I'm using a noise gate as well. So now we're definitely squaring off. So I can hear that. That is a kind of a cool sound there. Violin-like. It's got like a violin type sustain. I don't even think violins do sustain, but it's got like it's very square. I can hear it sort of distorting and then getting filtered out, and it almost wants to just take off. I got the feeling if I took the clon off, this would just go insane. I'm going to do it. When I say insane, I mean bad. Yeah, it's just zizzy, like. Yeah, it's super ziz, okay? There might be an application for a sound like that, but I would never use it. So I'll put that clon back on. Okay, so all right, so I'm just back to SD1, OCD, and clon. So I'm back to sort of the start there, but the thing is, I haven't even adjusted any of the settings here. I haven't turned the gain up on the SD1 that's going in at the start. So all sorts of things can happen. Let's go and play around with the SD1, which is the very first overdrive pedal in the chain. Here's my pro camera work. So, all right, I've just cranked the gain up to sort of 12 o'clock. Sort of, that's all right. So the sky's the limit, really. I might just back off that drive on the SD1, go boost up a bit of gain on the OCD. So what's that sound like? Kind of sort of bit samey there. Bit of extra distortion on the DS1. All right, so lots of different options, lots of different sounds. I could probably make a 10-hour video just mucking around with all the different settings and stuff like that. But what I wanted to show you is just how by holding back a little bit on the distortion, it's very tempting for bedroom and home studio guitarists with little amps like this to just crank the distortion. It just sort of sounds a little bit too zizzy. Now, I've probably even gone a little bit zizzy in this demonstration. But as soon as you start introducing drums and bass and stuff like that, it really changes what things actually sound like and how they sit in the mix. So I don't know, just use this as a little bit of a experiment, a little bit of a template to sort of show you the different tone stacking options. My options might not be suitable for what you want to get. You might want to put the super overdrive at the end and the clon at the start, but that's the beauty of it. I just wanted to sort of show what's working for me at the moment. It could be different next week. Who knows? So anyway, maybe drop a comment and let us know how you like to stack your overdrive. But until then, see you next time.